Hi everyone. Today's presentation is going to be about information processing. Information processing is a psychological model on how we transfer any information, whether we're reading it, seeing it, smelling it, hearing it, how it transfers through different types of memory into a long-term memory, and then how it interacts and how we can use that information. So basically it's about how we learn. So we're just going to look at this model and see the different parts of it and how we can, by knowing it, we can perform better and learn better and focus on the types of tools and techniques and methods that we can, so that we can uh, learn more and more efficient, be more efficient. So we're going to look at the first part. The first part here we can see is some sort of stimulus. So this is whether you're reading a textbook, you're listening to a lecture. The first thing we have to do is we're going to experience it in a sensory manner. Expert learners know that they learn through their senses. In university, most of them is going to be through our eyes and our ears. We're going to hear and we're going to see. But we also learn through touch, smell, and other senses. So balance, motor sensors. We have pain as well, pleasure. We learn through these are also types of senses that we experience. The two most common ones are going to be sight and sound. Once it goes into the sensory memory, this lasts for a fraction of a second. We're going to either forget something, we're going to forget most of it, and then it's going to get transferred. It gets transferred to our short-term memory and our working memory. This is where we do most of our thinking. This is where you can kind of think of working memory as your imagination type part, where you can take information in mind, you've paid attention to it, you're thinking about it, you're using it. Now we're going to either forget it if we don't need it. We might even respond here. We may write something down that we hear in a lecture. Taking notes, this would be this kind of response down here. Then after this here is also time limited as well. It's around 60 seconds to 120 seconds, 2 minutes. Anything after that, if we're remembering anything from 2 minutes ago, it means it's been transferred to long-term memory. And we want to be able to get it to long-term memory. Long-term memory is infinite. At the moment, there is no real capacity to this. An experience of this will be childhood memories. You'll still be able to remember something you'll be driving down the street, or someone might say something, and you'll remember a whole story. And then the more of that story you remember, the more you start remembering. And it's a chain event. We get these triggers, and it can be from 20 years ago. Well, for me, 20 years ago, maybe not you guys. This retrieval part here is, we can see there's a loop in here. We transfer it to long-term memory, but we also use it. So we've got our own knowledge. So we have our own knowledge bank. We have all this information that you've learned in high school and just throughout your entire life. And we're always working with it. That's why it's called working memory, that it comes in and we're thinking about material. So we got something new, we just read a sentence, we just heard a professor say something, it comes in. We pay attention to it, it comes into short-term memory, we start thinking about it, it's going to interact with any sort of memories that we have, whatever it makes us think about, and then we're going to start using it. And this is the process. We see something, we hear something, we pay attention to it. As soon as we pay attention, it's transferred to short-term memory, working memory. Once we've paid attention to it, we start thinking about it and using it, we're already automatically interacting with it here. Our main goal is this one here. We want to transfer to long-term memory, and then we want to do this one here. We want to be able to retrieve it for exams. This is us being able to show that we can use our memory once we start getting tested. So the next part, we're just going to look at some of the actions or behaviors that we need to do at each stage. So here's our vision and our auditory, our listening. This is the kind of stimulus that we're going to be getting. It's going to be coming in, then we must pay attention. Attention is the first step to memory. If we don't listen carefully, if we're not a good listener, if we're not an active reader, it's not going to come into short-term memory and it's never going to get to long-term memory. We're just going to have to keep repeating this one over and over and over again. We have to keep paying attention and using rehearsal more and more and more, because we didn't pay attention the first time. So we have to be able to really use as many attention strategies and be able to improve our concentration. Typically that's by decreasing any distractions that we're experiencing. That'll be a different video. Rehearsal. Rehearsal is the main one that we use here. If we're trying to keep something in mind, we usually think of it and repeat it over and over again. If someone tells you their name, you try to say it a few times so that if you don't want to forget it. if someone tells you a number, you probably say it to yourself a few times before you, if you don't have a pen at time and you want to write it down. But if the professor says something and you want to be able to write it down, you might say it and you don't have a pen right there. You're going to be trying to keep that in mind. You're going to more than likely be rehearsing it inside your head. You're going to be saying those words over and over again until you can actually write it down. Then over here, to get it to long-term memory, so most students here, this is where we focus. We focus on rehearsal. We think that I'm going to rewrite my notes, I'm going to keep highlighting, I'm going to keep rereading. And what we see is that actually only works for short-term memory. It's limited. It doesn't last long. What we need to do is we need to be doing, as a few examples, we need to be making elaborations, we need to be making connections, we need to be using some sort of mental models or some sort of rules that we can use to, in psychology it's called encoding, but just make a better representation of it and transfer it. Make sure that we're transferring it over here. So this is just about the process. We're going to look at a whole bunch of these different ones here of how we can do this and how we can do the retrieval, practicing retrieval. So what can we do to store it and what can we do to pull it back out? Because these are two different mechanisms and we need to have different strategies. We need to practice both. If we want to use our long-term memory to the best that we can, we want to be able to use different strategies to get it in there, and then we have to use other ones to be able to pull it back out. That's going to be all for today. Until next time.